July 22nd, 11:30 p.m. A man escapes an apartment building in Milwaukee and begins a frantic search for police officers. Upon finally finding a cop, the man, Mr. Tracy Edwards, says that he has been handcuffed, exploited, and raped by a freak and had to fight to escape this man's wrath. Noticing the cuffs on Mr. Edwards' wrists, the cop attempts to undo them, but quickly realizes that they weren't police affiliated. The cop calls for a search of the apartment building, where inside they find the keepings and uncover the disgusting past of one of America's most wanted and most devastating serial killers. I introduce you to the Milwaukee murderer, the Milwaukee cannibal, Mr. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Singing my life with his words, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song.
Born on May 21st, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Jeffrey was just like any other child. His mother, a teletype machine instructor, and his father, a student at Marquette University, were both incredibly intelligent individuals, but due to their financial needs, they were often working long hours. Due to this, Dahmer was deprived of necessary attention as a child, and his mother, an attention-driven egotist, found breastfeeding tiresome, so she would not provide for Jeffrey in that sense. During his younger years, Jeffrey's mother became progressively more bedridden, and in the father's rare hours home, he would spend it with her, not with Jeffrey. Despite this, Dahmer was a fairly energetic child until around the age of 4, when he underwent a double hernia surgery. It was from this point forward that Dahmer became more and more timid, as the neglect from his parents and the formation of his mother's painkiller addiction and suicide attempts were taking a toll on his psychology.
Sort of lived in my own little fantasy world when things got too heated in the household. It was just my own little world where I had control.
It was also at a young age where he showed his first and only McDonald triad characteristic of killing and in his case preserving dead animals.
Rode around on his bike, took containers, garbage bags and so forth, and collected roadkills and brought them back and examined them.
Dahmer attended elementary school in Wisconsin until 1968, when he moved to Ohio due to his dad's new job as an analytical chemist. It is in Ohio where Dahmer attended high school and began to deal with liquor and hard alcohol starting at the
age 14 or 15. Started having obsessive thoughts of violence intermingled with sex.
Throughout his high school career, he was an outcast and a class clown, and despite being seen as intelligent by his educators, he had poor grades due to his apathy. Dahmer enrolled in Ohio State University following his parents' divorce and right after his first murder. His alcoholism also progressed during this time. After just a semester at university, he dropped out and joined the military. He was in the military for 2 years before rape accusations and alcoholic behavior led him to honorable discharges. Dahmer was a loner in his adult ages, as he lived in Miami and Ohio alone, but when he lived in Wisconsin, he lived with his grandmother until she kicked him out. Throughout this time, he continued his obsession with dead animals and homosexual erotica. He had various jobs as a chocolate factory worker, hotel worker, and other jobs and periods of unemployment, but was riddled with indecent exposure and disorderly conduct, sexual fondling, and sexual assault charges, as well as constant evictions. Moving into his murders, Dahmer killed a total of 16 people during his serial killings. Dahmer was fairly routine in his murders and had a set pattern that he followed for all of them. Dahmer would go out to a gay bar or gay brothel and look to pick out a victim. Once he selected his victim, he would offer them $50 to $100 to pose in nude pictures. Once he brought them back and took photos of them in suggested positions, he would have sex with them. He would then strangle them to death while they were unconscious, creating a painless yet dominating death.
The killing was just a means to an end. That was the least satisfactory part. I didn't enjoy doing that.
Once the victims were deceased, he would continue to have sexual actions with their bodies. Once he was done sexually exploiting the body, he would dismember them, removing the head, genitals, and cutting apart their body into various pieces.
Doing what I did was my way of feeling in complete control, at least for that situation, creating my own little world where I had the final say.
He would then dispose most of the body but for certain victims, he would keep their head or genitals, oftentimes sorting the heads in his freezer and other extremities in a bleach solution located in a tub in his bedroom. It was in the later victims that we see his growth in aggression.
He would still attract his victims in the same fashion and bribe them with sex and money, but once he lured them into his home, his actions became more disturbing. It was in these later victims that Dahmer experimented with drilling a hole in the skull and injecting hydrochloric acid to keep the person in the state of a conscious coma.
I just wanted to have the person under my complete control to do with as I wanted.
All of these trials failed, however, and Dahmer was forced to strangle them. It was also in these later victims that Dahmer displays his cannibalism, as he consumed at least parts of one of the bodies. Furthermore, he kept more body parts from these victims, and his necrophilia is more present in these encounters. Dahmer was an organized serial killer, as his routine and his victims were extremely uniform. He left minimal evidence, he had serial dismemberment, and he was intelligent and led a normal human lifestyle. He seemed to any outsider completely normal, except with a neglecting childhood and some weird quirks and characteristics. He was also a hedonistic killer, as he is quoted saying, "I came to see people as objects of sexual pleasure, not as people."
Having complete control over someone, total control, not having to consider their wishes, being able to keep them there as long as I wanted, and that was a big part of it. Lust played a big part of it, controlling lust.
When caught, Dahmer immediately tried to escape arrest and dispose of the evidence, but ultimately failed to do so. There was no trial for guilt, as Dahmer confessed to the murders of 16 people and eventually one more, but all the pictures and body parts made an overwhelming case against him. There was, however, a trial to determine his mental sanity, as the prosecution argued that any disorders did not deprive Dahmer of the ability to appreciate the criminality of his conduct, or to deprive him of the ability to resist his impulses, while the defense argued that Dahmer suffered from a mental disease and was driven by obsessions and impulses that he was unable to control. Dahmer was diagnosed with a personality disorder not otherwise specified, featuring borderline, obsessive-compulsive, and sadistic traits. Despite this, he was found sane and worthy to receive punishment. Dahmer received 17 life sentences for his crimes, although he was murdered in prison only 9 years after being put in. Dahmer forever will be one of the most sadistic serial killers to ever walk this earth.